Alright guys, and welcome. A moment ago I posted a video about how you could manually correct and white balance both the exposure and the white balance of an image. Now, if most of you are probably familiar with using the white balance correction tool in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw, and of course if you just take the white balancing eyedropper, you're able to click on a given image, like your gray card image, and then you can sync that to a whole series of images. The question becomes, how do I do that if I'm making some type of a manual white balance correction and I'm in Photoshop? And it's really quite simple. Let me walk you through the process. If I took this image and it's a little bit too blue, and using the exact same process I used in the previous video, if I thought this was too blue, I could pull up a gray card, I could switch to the blue channel, and if I tried to take some blue out of the image, and let's say right about there was the level I wanted to pull out of the image, all I would do is I can come over here and I can hit save that as a preset. So we're going to call this white shirt, okay? Because she's wearing a white shirt. And I can tell it okay. So I have corrected this one image. If I hit Control-Alt-Z, it takes that off of the image. Alright, so if I open a second image in the series, if I want to apply that correction, I can go to Image Adjustment Levels and now go to my white shirt adjustment that I just did and saved on the other image, and when I hit it, it makes the exact same correction. Understand? Okay. So I could manually open a number of images, and I could go to the levels command, search for and find the correction, and kind of manually apply it. But if I had 100 images to do, that could take a while. So I hit Control-Alt-Z to take that correction off. There's two ways to expedite the process. One is I can create an action. So if I go Image Adjustment, well, let me start by getting my Actions palette open. I'm sorry. I'm going to open my Actions palette. I'm going to turn off button mode, and I'm going to record a new action. And we're going to call this Make Julie's Shirt Whiter, just for fun. I'm going to hit record. Once you start recording a macro, it's going to copy everything that you're doing. And what we're doing in this case is going Image Adjustment Levels. And if I pull some blue out, which makes her warmer and fixes her shirt, and I say OK, and then I stop recording my macro. If I switch back to button mode, here's Make Julie's Shirt Whiter. Now I already did it while I was creating the action, so I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Z to take that off. And now, one way to expedite the program is as I'm opening images in the series, if I want to apply that levels adjustment without having to go and actually open the palette, if I just click on Make Julie Shirt Whiter, it does that for me. If I have a whole series of images, if I put them in a folder, I can go to File, Automate, Batch, and the action that I'm wanting to run is the Make Julie Shirt Whiter action. It's going to ask me for a source, which is the folder that I put the images in, and I can choose that. Then I can tell it the destination, so I actually can keep my originals and process them out, or I can tell it I don't want a destination, which means it's going to overwrite my images. And I can run that action on an entire folder of images. It's one way of doing it. The other thing you can do that a lot of people aren't familiar with in Photoshop is you can create these things. They're called droplets. So I can go File, Automate, and this create a droplet. Boom. And it asks me which action I want to play, and it's the Make Julie's Shirt Whiter action. It asks me where do I want to save the droplet. So I'm just going to save it on my desktop. We're going to call it Make Julie's Shirt Whiter droplet, and save it and tell it OK. So if I have a folder of images that were all set, taken with the same white balance, and let's assume that I have them in a folder, Julie in her white shirt, and let's assume, again, for the sake of argument, that I have multiple images in there. Then all I have to do is, this is the droplet that we made, the Make Julie's Shirt Whiter droplet. And if I have a folder, I can create 10 or 20 or 15 adjustments as droplets. And what the advantage of a droplet is, I can just take it and drop it on this folder. And it will make the adjustment through Photoshop to that image, and I'm done. So it doesn't matter that there's 1 in here, or 10 in here, or 50 in here. It will go through and process them. And that's the advantage of using droplets. Yet another way is if I have multiple images open at one time, and I go File, Automate, Batch, one of my sources can be opened files. So let's say I had 3 opened images. I can click to apply that to the open file and OK, and it'll do all of them. So there's multiple ways to apply this. Now here's the thing that's cool. I called that levels command, Make Julie's Shirt Whiter. I can actually open a different image if I wanted. Let's say I open this motorcycle image. If I go to Image Adjustment Levels, and instead of taking blue out, I crank a bunch of blue in, to make it a much cooler image. And I come up here and I save it, save that preset as, I called that Julie's White Shirt. If I call this one Julie White Shirt, it's going to say you're going to override that. I sure do. I tell it OK. Now, because I have overwritten what I did in levels from the time before, if I come back to my action palette, even though I created an action called Make Julie's Shirt Whiter that took blue out, because I reprocessed the levels command and gave it the exact same name, now when I hit this action button, it actually makes the image more blue instead of the other way. So and you go, so what does all that mean? I can set up a button on my action palette that's, let's say we call it Fix White Balance. And I can go to Levels. and do my adjustments. You know, I can do my adjustments to levels to get the grade card where I want it, right? And then if I save that to fix white balance, every time I replace this file, you know, with a new series of images, my original button that I called, you know, make Julie's shirt whiter or fix white balance or whatever I called it, it's updating my action so that I don't have to keep creating the action button, because I'm actually just substituting out however I'm saving this. And as long as I save it and give it the new name, and I can already see what I've saved things in. So if I have an action button set up to apply Julie Shoot, now I make a completely different adjustment to this one, but I save it as Julie Shoot. Then the button that I put over here to run that is going to use the newest version of that. So it's not that hard. If you get in there and play around with it, it'll start to make some sense. Of course, I don't do large series of images, like I don't shoot seniors where I'm trying to get everything to match. But one of the reasons it's important to get your white balance to match from image to image is often if you're doing either a book or a gallery or a series of images, if your white balance is bouncing all over the place through that series of images, you may not necessarily notice just from one image to the next. But if you pull them up one after the other or on screen, having a wonky white balance really becomes noticeable. If you have any questions,